Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Joseph Campbell Mayo Jr., life dates 1834 to 1898, saw the chaos, confusion, and carnage of Pickett's charge in Gettysburg firsthand. A nephew of Richmond's mayor, Joseph Mayo, an 1852 graduate of Virginia Military Institute, graduating third of 24 cadets and colonel of the 3rd Virginia Infantry. Mayo led his 322 men into Gettysburg and suffered a wound in his hand during Pickett's charge. His second wound of the war, the first occurring less than a year earlier at Antietam. Mayo's reminiscence of Pickett's charge was published in the Southern Historical Society papers in 1906, 8 years after his death. It's a vivid graphic account. I want to share a passage, the part where he describes the combat at the conclusion of the massive bombardment that preceded the charge. Mayo begins. As the terrific duel was drawing to a close, General Pickett came riding briskly down the rear of the line, calling to the men to get up and prepare to advance and remember old Virginia, our dear old third. It was a heartrending sight which greeted me as I moved along your decimated ranks. While quickly and without a word of command, the men fell into their places, especially to see our color bearer, Murden, as fine as a type of a true soldier's ship as ever stepped beneath the folds of the spotless stars and bars, now lying there, stark and stiff, a hideous hole sheer through his stalwart body, and his right hand closed in a death grip around the staff of that beautiful new flag, which today, for the first and last time, has braved the battle and the breeze. The devoted little column moved to the assault with Garnett and Kemper in front and Armistead behind in close supporting distance. Soon after clearing our batteries, it was found necessary to change direction to the left. While conducting the movement, which was made in perfect order under a galling flank fire from the Round Top, General Pickett, for the second time, cautioned me to be sure and keep the proper interval with General Garnett. Armistead was expected to catch up and extend the line on the left. Then we swept onward again, straight for the Golgotha of Seminary Ridge, half a mile distant across the open plain. As we neared the Emmitsburg Road, along which, behind piles of rails, the enemy's strong line of skirmishers was posted, General Kemper called to me to give attention to matters on the left while he went to see what troops those were coming up behind us. Glancing after him, I caught a glimpse of a small body of men, compact and solid as a wedge, moving swiftly to the left oblique, as if aiming to uncover Garnett's brigade. But they were Armistead's people, and as Kemper cantered down their front on his mettlesome sorrel, they greeted him with a rousing cheer, which I know made his gallant heart leap for joy. At the same moment, I saw a disorderly crowd of men breaking for the rear, and Pickett, with Stuart Symington, Ned Baird, and others, vainly trying to stop the rout. And now the guns of Cushing and Abbott, double stocked by General Gibbon's express order, reinforced the terrific fire of the infantry behind the stone fence, literally riddling the orchard on the left of the now famous Cadore House, through which my regiment and some of the others passed. While clearing this obstruction, and as we were getting into shape again, several things were impressed upon my memory. First, the amusement it seemed to afford orderly Waddy forward, who might, if he pleased, have stayed behind with the horses to see me duck my head as a ball whizzed in an ace of my nose. Next, to see Captain Lewis, of Company C, looking as lazy and lackadaisical, and, if possible, more tired and bored than usual, carrying his sword point foremost over his shoulder and addressing his company in that invariably plaintive tone, half command, half entreaty. "Don't crowd, boys, don't crowd. Pretty hot, Captain," I said in passing. "It's ridiculous, Colonel, perfectly ridiculous," which in his vocabulary meant as bad could be. Then Captain Tom Hodges, directing my attention to a splendid looking Federal officer, magnificently mounted, straining his horse at full speed along the crest of a hill 100 yards in our front, and both of us calling to the skirmishers, "Don't shoot him! Don't shoot him!" And lastly, the impetuous Kemper, as rising in his stirrups and pointing to the left with his sword, he shouted, "There are the guns, boys, go for them." It was an injudicious order, but they obeyed with a will and, mingled with Garnett's people, pushed rapidly up the heights. Within a few steps of the stone fence, while in the act of shaking hands with General Garnett and congratulating him on being able to be with his men, he had been seriously ill a few days before, I heard someone calling to me, and turning my head, saw that it was Captain Fry. He was mounted, and blood was streaming from his horse's neck. Colonel Terry had sent him to stop the rush to left. The enemy in force, Stannard's Vermonters, had penetrated to our rear. He told me that Kemper had been struck down. It was feared mortally. With the help of Colonel Carrington of the 18th and Major Bentley of the 24th, I hastily gathered a small band together and faced them to meet the new danger. After that, everything was a wild, kaleidoscopic whirl. A man near me seemed to be keeping a tally of the dead for my especial benefit. First it was Patton, then Calcote, then Phillips, and I know not how many more. Colonel Williams was knocked out of the saddle by a ball in the shoulder near the brick house and, in falling, was killed by his own sword. His little bay mare kept on with the men in the charge. I can see her now as she came limping and sadly crippled down the hill. I saw her again at Williamsport in care of his faithful man Harry, who asked me what I thought old master would say when she was all belonging to Mars Lewis he had to take home. Seeing the men as they fired throw down their guns and pick up others from the ground, I followed suit, shooting into a flock of bluecoats that were pouring down from the right. I noticed how close their flags were together. Probably they were the same people whom Hood and McLaws had handled so roughly the day before. "Used up," as General Meade said of them. Suddenly there was a hissing sound like the hooded cobra's whisper of death, a deafening explosion, a sharp pang of pain somewhere, a momentary blank, and when I got on my feet again, there were splinters of bone and lumps of flesh sticking to my clothes. Then I remembered seeing Langtell Tolliver, adjutant of the 24th, jumping like a kangaroo and rubbing his crazy bone and blessing the Yankees in a way that did credit to old Jube Early's one-time law partner, and handsome O.C. White, the boy lieutenant of Company A, taking off his hat to show me where a ball had raised a whelk on his scalp and carried away one of his pretty flaxen curls. And lastly, old Buck Terry, with a peculiarly sad smile on his face, standing with poor George and Val Harris and others between the colors of the 11th and 24th, near where now is the pretty monument of Colonel Ward of Massachusetts. I could not hear what he said, but he was pointing rearwards with his sword, and I knew what that meant. As I gave one hurried glance over the field we had traversed, the thought in my mind was repeatedly at my side, "Oh, Colonel, why don't they support us?" It was Walker, General Kemper's orderly, unhorsed, but still unscathed and undaunted, awkward, ungainly, hard-featured, good-natured, simple-minded, stout-hearted Walker, one of the 11th boys, I believe, only a private doing his duty with might and main and wrecking no more glory than the ox that has won the prize at a cattle show. At the storming of the Redan, where Wyndham's forlorn hope tumbled into the ditch and couldn't get out, owing to the scarcity of ladders, and the few they had were too short, the men huddled together, dazed and bewildered, and were mowed down like dumb beasts by the Muscovite rifles, because there were no officers left to lead them. There was a notable exception, an Irishman scrambling up the scrape. He shouted, "Come on, boys, follow the captain." The captain fell, but Pat went on to immortality. It was not so that day at Gettysburg. 20 paces beyond the spot, which is marked to tell where stout old Armistead fell, the foremost hero of them all, a humble private without a name, bit the dust. The man in blue who told the story had a seam in his cheek. I tried to save him, but he would not give up, so I had to kill him to save my own life. "What orders do you leave us, my lord, if you are killed?" asked Hill of Wellington when the pounding was hardest on that famous plateau at Waterloo. "Do as I am doing," he replied, and turning to the men, he said, "Boys, you can't think of giving away. Remember Old England." And well it was for Old England that behind the Iron Duke was a wall of iron men. Calling to the group around me to spread themselves, I led the way back to the woods in rear of our guns on Seminary Ridge, realizing painfully our own sad plight. We were, of course, anxiously concerned for the rest of our people. But soon, Marse Robert came along, followed by his faithful aides, the two Charleses, Venable and Marshall. How ineffably grand he appeared, a very anointed king of command, posing for the chisel of Phidias, and looking on him, we knew that the army was safe. So ended our part in the day's bloody work. So there you have the first person testimony, the eyewitness account, written long after the war by Colonel Joseph Campbell Mayo, Jr. of the 3rd Virginia Infantry. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.